The Assistant Treasurer.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I'd like to take this opportunity to update the House on the government's policy objective of promoting Australia as a financial services hub. The government has long had the policy of identifying artificial barriers to the competitiveness of the Australian financial services sector and eliminating these barriers. The Australian financial services sector is well developed and competitive, but as I've said in the past, the robustness of the Australian financial services sector has not translated into exports. While we have the fourth largest pool of funds under management in the world and a very good funds management capacity, we haven't attracted significant amounts of overseas money to be invested or managed in Australia. Accordingly, the government made a commitment when in opposition to reduce the withholding tax rate on the distribution to non-residents by Australian managed funds. This was quite a controversial announcement at the time. It was fervently resisted by the previous government. However, at the 1st of July 2009, the relevant withholding rate will go to 15%, on the 1st of July 2010 to 7.5%, with one of the lowest rates in the world. This is an example of the government identifying artificial barriers to the competitiveness of our funds management industry and financial services sector more generally and eliminating them. Madam Deputy Speaker, we very much recognise that there is more to be done. Last July, the government convened a financial services hub summit in Sydney with industry, regulators and state governments to assist in further identifying competitive barriers and outline a path for going forward. The summit was clear in its recommendation that we need a permanent body to close the ring between the government and the sector and to promote Australia as a financial services hub. Accordingly, Madam Deputy Speaker, on the 26th of September last year, I announced the establishment of the Australian Financial Centre Forum to develop a coherent framework to advance Australian financial services sector's international competitiveness and position Australia as a leading financial services centre. I announced the appointment of Mr Mark Johnson, retired Deputy Chairman of the Macquarie Bank, as Chairman of the Forum, and also the establishment of a panel of experts and an industry reference group, all supported by a Treasury Secretariat. The structure of the Forum reflects the fact that it is a joint government-industry initiative aimed at ensuring the comparative strengths of the Australian financial services sector are recognised and utilised, and the sector is in a position to take full advantage of the opportunities available to it. Today I report to Parliament progress made by this Forum since its establishment. The first point to make is that the Forum was born in the midst of a global crisis, which deteriorated markedly shortly after the announcement of the initiative. The Australian financial services sector has certainly not been immune from this crisis, but the sector has, comparatively, fared better than most. This is due in no short measure to the quality of our regulatory system and of the people who administer it. It also reflects well on the quality and risk management skills of corporate Australia. Nevertheless, this is a tough time for the Australian economy. But out of this adversity will arise opportunities. It is in anticipation of those opportunities that the government remains committed to the Australian Financial Centre Forum initiative. The development of a blueprint for positioning Australia as a leading financial centre as the world emerges from the current crisis is regarded as a priority by the government. Since its establishment, the Forum's panel of experts and reference group has met regularly and have called for and received 2 rounds of submissions from industry. Forum representatives have also met personally with many stakeholders in the sector. I've been kept up to date with the feedback from industry, and already this feedback, along with the input from other government initiatives, has led to government actions. On the 12th of May, after receiving the recommendations of the Board of Tax and the Australian Financial Centre Forum, I announced a major modernisation of the attribution rules and the deemed capital account treatment for capital gains and losses made on disposal of investment assets by managed investment trusts, subject to appropriate integrity rules. Australia's attribution rules, the Controlled Foreign Company, or CFC rules, and the Foreign Investment Fund, or FIF rules, Transfer of Trust rules and the Deemed Present Entitlement rules are notoriously complex. Under the government's announced changes to the attribution rules, the CFC provisions will be retained as the primary set of rules designed to counter tax deferral arrangements. The CFC provisions will be rewritten in the Income Tax Assessment Act 1997. The FIF provisions will be repealed and replaced with a specific, narrowly defined anti-avoidance rule that applies to offshore accumulation or roll-up funds. The Deemed Present Entitlement rules will be repealed. The Transfer of Trust rules will be retained with amendments to enhance their effectiveness and improve their integrity. These reforms will dramatically reduce compliance costs for managed funds and other businesses, saving business up to $80 million each year. The reforms are fiscally responsible and will help Australian companies compete in global markets at minimal revenue cost, while delivering major compliance cost benefits. Allowing for deemed capital account treatment for managed investment trusts will provide more certainty dramatically reduce complexity and compliance costs for affected businesses, and ensure Australia's tax regime is competitive in attracting foreign funds. There remain a number of implementation details that need to be considered with this measure and which will be canvassed in a Treasury consultation paper to be released shortly. As I said in announcing them, these measures form a key part of the Rudd government's election commitment to make Australia a funds management hub in the Asia-Pacific region and will help boost financial services exports. The changes have been welcomed by industry. The Deputy Chief Executive of the Investment and Financial Services Association, Mr John O'Shaughnessy, for example, commented that these budget measures will provide a strong platform for the Australian managed funds industry to continue to grow domestically and increase its share of exports to the region. The government continues to examine other possible areas for reform identified by the Australian Financial Centre Forum and looks forward to receiving its further reports later in the year. Many of the issues raised by the industry through the forum are tax-related. In particular, representations have been made on the subject of interest withholding tax. These submissions go to tax on interest paid on borrowings by Australian branches and subsidiaries of foreign financial institutions to their parent companies, and on interest paid by Australian banks in respect of foreign source deposits. Another interbank funding issue that has been raised is that of the limit of the deductibility of interest paid to foreign bank branch parents with reference to the London Interbank Offer Rate, or the LIBOR. Industries place considerable importance on the issue of clarity in the tax system. The forums received many representations suggesting the lack of tax clarity and consistency in a number of areas is inhibiting the growth and development of the financial services sector. The forum has written to the Henry Review outlining the nature of these concerns, and they will be considered in the context of that review. A particular issue that industry has raised is the tax treatment of income derived by foreign funds when they utilise the services of Australian fund managers. I've asked the Treasury to examine and provide advice on industry's proposal to introduce an investment manager exemption. Another taxation matter that has been raised in the context of the forum is the question of the GST on financial supplies. As I announced on the 12th of May, I've agreed to Treasury undertaking reviews of the GST margin scheme and the application of the GST to financial supplies. I've asked the Treasury to consult widely. These reviews are designed to simplify the operation of the legislation and reduce both compliance and administrative costs, while retaining the existing policy intent. To facilitate reviews, Treasury has prepared discussion papers and welcomes submissions. The discussion papers can be obtained from the Treasury website. Ease of market access within the Asia-Pacific region and beyond for Australian financial services companies is a key dimension of the work of the forum. Within that context, the potential development of a network of appropriate mutual recognition arrangements for the financial sector regulation area has been raised by the forum as a recommendation for priority treatment. As a result, I've raised this matter with the Minister for Superannuation and Corporate Law, and I know he's actively pursuing the matter and indeed recently raised this issue on his visit to Singapore with the relevant officials there. A specific suggestion that has come out of the submissions to the forum is that of establishing a regulatory one-stop online gateway, which streamlines and facilitates foreign entrance into the Australian market. This proposal, which would appear to have some merit, is being examined in more detail in the context of the forum's ongoing work. An interesting matter that has been raised through the forum and elsewhere, notably through Austrade, DFAT and by my colleague, the Minister for Trade, is that of Islamic finance. This has been highlighted as an area of emergent opportunity. Despite the global financial crisis in the Middle East and other Islamic centres, there are funds to invest and a demand for Islamic finance products. Regulation in some jurisdictions can create an uneven playing field for these products due to their form. Those countries where Islamic finance products are easily facilitated will have a competitive advantage in attracting these funds. Many countries around the world, including the United Kingdom and France, are taking measures aimed at facilitating Islamic finance products. The Australian Government is concerned to ensure that the Australian financial sector is not being left behind in this emerging field, and I'm pleased to note that the Australian Financial Centre Forum held a roundtable on Islamic finance and taxation issues at the Treasury offices in Canberra in March. This roundtable was a start in identifying whether there are any regulatory impediments in relation to promoting Islamic finance products in Australia. I'm pleased to announce that the Australian Financial Centre Forum website is online, and I encourage members of the public to view the site, where they can find details of submissions made to the forum and other information. The site can be accessed at www.treasury.gov.au/AFCF. The Government looks forward to receiving the forum's recommendation on a policy blueprint for promoting Australia as the leading financial services centre later this year. I will report back to Parliament as appropriate on further progress made by the forum. On behalf of the Government, I'd like to thank the Forum Chair, Mark Johnson, and all members of the panel of experts and the reference group for their hard work and intellectual input into this very important initiative. The Government is confident that as a result of the ongoing work and recommendations of the Forum, what will emerge is an even more open, well-regulated, competitive and innovative financial services sector able to take full advantage of the regional and global opportunities which are likely to come its way in the future. In the current environment in which the financial services industry around the world has been battered from crisis to crisis, it would be easy to walk away from the promotion of Australia as a financial services hub. That would be the worst outcome. For several years to come, I suspect the world's investors will be looking for a safe, stable home for investment. With the help of the Australian Financial Centre Forum, we will be well placed to make the most of this opportunity.